Biden warns Chinese Xi of Western investment after meeting with Putin. In the words of a CNN interview, U.S. President Joe Biden told Chinese President Xi Jinping to be careful after meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin as Beijing relied on Western investment. "I said this is not a threat, this is surveillance," Biden said. Since Russia entered Ukraine, 600 American companies have withdrawn from Russia. You tell me your business depends on European and American investments. Be careful. Be careful. Putin and Xi Jinping met for 2 days in March. At the meeting, the two sides happily expressed Sino-Russian friendship and shared their criticism of the West, but there was no indication of Ukraine's anti-revolutionary movement. The couple also attended a virtual meeting earlier this week. Taiwan, Russia's war in Ukraine, increased U.S. military threats, etc. Tensions and disagreements in Sino-U.S. relations on national security issues, including export restrictions on technology and Chinese state-owned enterprises. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen continued her visit to China on Saturday. When asked about Xi's response, Biden replied, "He's listening but doesn't act." Argument. You see, he did not attack Russia with all his might. I think we can find a way to fix this. The news came as U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen made a 4-day visit to China to improve relations between the two countries, which have been strained by the latest developments in Taiwan and the Ukraine war. In an interview with CNN after the meeting, Putin told Xi that Beijing should be careful as it relies on Western capital. I said this is not a threat. This is an observation. Biden said, since Russia entered Ukraine, 600 American companies have gone to Russia. And you told me that your business depends on European and American investments. And be careful. Be careful, he added. When asked about Xi's response to the threat, Biden said, he is listening, not challenging. If you see, he is not attacking Russia with all his might. So I think we can find a solution to this problem. In particular, Xi Jinping and Putin met on a 2-day visit to Moscow in early March this year. Both spoke of the collaborative relationship while criticizing the West for the war in Ukraine. Secretary of State Janet Yellen is currently in Beijing for a 4-day visit that appears to aim to restore relations. We are seeking diversification, not separation. A split between the world's two largest economies will destabilize the world economy, Yellen told U.S. delegates at a conference held in Beijing by the American Chamber of Commerce. Impossible. This is not Biden's first attack on Xi. Speaking at a fundraising event in California last month, Biden compared Xi to a dictator. When I shot the 2-car balloon with the spies, Xi was very upset because he did not know that the balloon was there. No, I am serious. It's a shame for the regime because they don't know what's going on, he said, but there was no sign of a discussion about the war against Ukraine. They also attended a virtual meeting earlier this week. U.S.-China relations have become strained due to national security concerns such as Taiwan, Russia's war in Ukraine, increased U.S. export restrictions on technology, and China's economic policy, according to Reuters. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen continued her visit to China on Saturday. He called for economic reform in China and criticized China's recent aggressive actions against American companies and their control over mineral exports, while the Chinese president asked him to work halfway with China to get bilateral relations back on track. Yellen met with President Li Chang during a visit to Beijing to improve Sino-US economic relations. But in a public speech, Washington and its allies said the West would back down against what China called unfair trade. Clearly stated. Speaking at the conference on Friday, Yellen said, "Winner not take it all. We are looking for healthy economic competition through a fair process that can benefit both countries over time." The Treasury Department said it was just and virtuous. China released Li Keqiang's statement calling for better communication and reconciliation on economic issues. Honest, in-depth and pragmatic dialogue will lead to security and good energy in China economic relations. After Yevgeny Prigozhin's attack on the Russian army on June 24, American intelligence continues to investigate what is the most important problem for the country's security guards, namely the outcome of the fight, no matter how short and how it might change. What % of Russia's threat to the West? Is it big or small? Article. The decision to resolve this issue includes the United States. Article. With President Putin weakening, the United States government's ability to create stability and predictability in Russia is still weak for it. Most importantly, the image of all the talented and intelligent people under Putin for over 2 decades has been tarnished. He may lose faith and fear in the institutions he believes in, military, intelligence, and security. He could not change the course of events and return from the events that he had rightly judged and not judged, which he should not have done. Putin now has a choice to make and appears to be seeking a middle ground. He waited too long to respond to Prigozhin's threat, partly because he believed the Wagnerian leader was acting and collaborating in his own interests, and partly because he feared the threat was too serious to be withdrawn. Whatever Putin does now, the result will be the Russian state security apparatus. This weather will make him and Russia even more desperate and make it difficult to work on near-term forecasts beyond the visible horizon and ferocious threats. These threats can come from people who want to be intimidated by fear, they can come from leaders who see Putin as inadequate, or they can come from the dangers of the streets, as Putin did. Insiders should reassess their abilities, or at least their ability to do better by taking action or joining the challenge. Undermining Putin's narrative. Prigozhin's departure may not mean that Putin's life is in danger, but over time it may make the Russian leader less self-confident and not afraid to announce the results with great effort. This theory is true, at least in Russian politics. Despite years of kleptocracy, Putin's popularity has a lot to do with his seriousness. He spoke of Russians seeking security when the country emerged from the 1998 financial crisis and gained pride as a world power. Also appeals to people from the West, particularly Europe, where Russia's economic integration and Putin's longevity have shown continuity and predictability in Europe. The Ukrainian war and the Prigozhin rebellion destroyed them all, if they did not. CIA Director William Burns speaks with the Ditchley Foundation in England on July 1 about the impact of the war in Ukraine on Russian leaders. violence, said Burns. Consider how Prigozhin's attack might have affected sentiment in Russia in light of recent CIA phone calls with Russia. Contact CIA Security. The movie has been viewed 2 times, although it is not clear. 5 million clicks in the first week shows how many came from Russia. This scandal created a golden moment for us at the CIA, Burns said. Burns will know that history supports his thinking. I am a 34-year Russian-speaking CIA officer who heads the Federal Security Service, FSB, one of 3 intelligence centers operating under Russian oversight in the former Soviet Republic. I always remember the repression of China's Tiananmen Square protesters in 1989. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. I wish you more luck today. Putin waited a long time for the attack and repeated the day of the attack, showing himself and all the pictures. Indeed, earlier that day, Putin was frustrated by his refusal to accept or use mercenary leaders and declared a coup that had no effect on the outcome. As a result, Putin not only lost the confidence of the Russian elite and the military, intelligence and security services, but perhaps more importantly, he experienced some fear. Whether Putin intended to use Prigozhin as a stick against military action to fear a mass reaction from Prigozhin, or to seek possible retaliation, the Russian president ultimately chose to remove Prigozhin from his post. Wagner's mercenary leader had taken over power directly from one of Prigozhin's previously criticized soldiers, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Shoigu. On June 10, Shoigu ordered all private Russian military companies and military personnel to sign an agreement granting direct control over their weapons by July 1. According to CNN, U.S. intelligence services have gathered comprehensive and accurate information about Prigozhin's attack plans, including where Wagner plans to go and how he will go. On June 26, Prigozhin said that after Shoigu's announcement, he revealed his plan and admitted that his actions were forced by Shoigu's plan, which was rejected by the public. Prigozhin also called his action not a betrayal, but a crime.